Welcome back everybody, Gonzalez Brothers Entertainment, and we are back with another ranking video. Today I'm going to rank my top 5 Christopher Nolan movies. Yes, I'm going to be talking about the Nolanverse. Well, it's not a shared universe, but I just like the way it sounds, the Nolanverse. I'll try not to include as many spoilers, but there will be a few. Fair warning. So let's get right into the ranking. Number 5, The Prestige. I initially don't remember watching this movie when it first came out, so I went back not too long ago and rewatched it, and I was very impressed with this film. The story that it tells about these two magicians who are at odds with each other because of something that happened between them in the past, and how they're trying to outdo each other and find out each other's tricks, but along the way they sort of become who they never wanted to be, and the villain is not who you think the villain is. And essentially this story is about losing yourself because of obsession and just throwing away who you were and completely becoming what you thought you never wanted to be and what you hated. So I really love this movie. I love the performances. Hugh Jackson, I always get those two confused. Christian Bale, Michael Caine, they were exceptional, and just the writing and the plot and how the movies moved along was fantastic. So that's why Prestige is my number 5 Christopher Nolan ranked movie. Number 4, Batman Begins. This is a movie that I couldn't wait to watch, especially after the last Batman of the 90s with that whole bat nipples debacle. And when I saw this movie, I was not disappointed. I was taken aback by the darker tone, the grittiness, the fact that this movie was more grounded in realism, and the fact that we also got to see Bruce Wayne's journey from a small boy who lost his parents and him trying to cope with the guilt and the loss of his loved ones, to his journey of him becoming the superhero that we all know, and him building that morality code, that code that he is unwilling to break, was fantastic to see. And Christian Bale was the best Batman we got in a very long time. The supporting cast was fantastic as well, and Hans Zimmer's score, as always, was top notch. Number 3, Inception. Here's a movie that could have been overly complicated and difficult to follow, but Christopher Nolan found a way to explain the world to the audience. The way he used Ellen Page, her going through this first experience about her learning about this new world, really made it easy for the audience to follow everything that was going on with this world. Also, the DiCaprio character having to deal with the guilt of having done something, inadvertently trying to save someone's life, and it turned out to be the complete opposite, and him trying to suppress that guilt and putting it in his subconscious, but it keeps popping up and becomes a major point in the story, especially in the end. Cillian Murphy's character was the one where they were supposed to plant this idea of, I gotta break up my father's company, and that all plays into him having a rocky relationship with his father, and his father passing and him becoming the heir to the entire company. But somehow the fact that he decides to break up his company really works, because deep down inside you know that he wants to do something different and really separate himself from what his father built and the expectations that his father put on him, and his father looking at him as if he was a failure. I think all that really worked in conjunction with planting the idea in his brain. The final thing I have to mention about this movie is Hans Zimmer. Once again, he steps up to the plate and knocks it out of the park. The Inception score has to be one of my favorite Hans Zimmer scores that he has ever worked on, and that's everything put together with this film, with the concepts, with the idea, with the performances and the music, makes Inception my number 3 Nolan movie. Number 2, Dunkirk. If you watch my previous video where I ranked the summer movies, then you know that I hold this movie in very high regard. And just, what else can I say about this movie that I haven't said before? It's just, The opening sequence where you're down in the beach, you feel the danger, you feel the peril, and then Hans Zimmer's score kicks in from the opening scene, and it just really drives the intensity up to another level. And the cinematography and how technically Christopher Nolan put this movie together is just outstanding without having to use a ton of dialogue. I know some people had an issue with not having a centralized character, but for me, this really works because in war, you don't always get to know every soldier who fought in a battle. Sometimes there are nameless soldiers who bleed out and die in these battlefields. And to me, at least, that's what Christopher Nolan was trying to push across, and I think it worked very well. Number 1, The Dark Knight. Could it have been anything other than The Dark Knight? At least not for me. I know I mentioned this throughout several of these films, but I gotta do it one more time. Hans Zimmer's score really sets the tone for what is to come. When you hear that initial first note of his score, it really takes you down to a dark, bleak place. And as we move on throughout the story, throughout the film, it just gets darker and darker and darker. And what can I say about Heath Ledger, Joker? It's so different than what we got in 1989 with Jack Nicholson. He's just pure evil, and he's doing everything just because he can, and he's trying to prove a point. And as much as you want to dislike the character, you just end up liking him every time he's on the screen. You can't get enough of him. And Batman having to face an opponent that is not the strongest physically is a little different, but the fact that mentally he is at his wit's end and at some time he is overmatched, it's just something very different. And I like the approach that Christopher Nolan and David S. Goyer took with the script, and it works really well. That Batman really is put in a difficult place where he knows that giving into the Joker's demands is the wrong thing to do, but at the same time people are dying around him and he has to carry that guilt, that weight. What should he do? Should he give in or should he continue to fight? And Bruce Wayne putting his trust in Harvey Dent, who was played by Aaron Eckhart beautifully, I must say, was something different, because if you know Batman lore, then you know that eventually Harvey Dent becomes Two-Face. But the way they did it in this movie was so creative, and how they used some of those plot devices to push the story forward were perfect. And the closing sequence where Batman has to make that choice of letting an entire city down and breaking the spirits of millions of citizens, or carrying the weight on his shoulders for something that he was completely innocent of, is something perfect and almost brings a tear to my eye. So there you have it. That's my list. That's my Christopher Nolan top 5 rankings. Do you agree? Should a movie have been lower? Should have been higher? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. As always, tell your neighbor, tell your pool man, tell your Ned Flanders. This is GB saying bye-bye.